2024 was another amazing year for Flesh and Blood, the game's 5th year and, perhaps, its best one yet. And off that momentum, new and curious players will be looking at Flesh and Blood headed into the upcoming year. 2024 was one of significant change, a headlong entry into the Japanese market, the release of 3 new primary sets, the welcome introduction of the Armory deck and First Strike product lines, 17 new heroes, and the retirement of the much beloved Dragon Mommy. So what are the best heroes to start out with headed into the new year? Whether you're a new player looking to jump into Fab or a veteran looking to help guide new players into your community, today I want to go over my top 5 heroes to start and grow with as we head into the dawn of 2025. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel and Go Again, a fabulous video cast discussing all things Flesh and Blood. I'm Andrew with you here as always, and today I'm discussing my top picks for new players not only to start out with, but to grow with as they dive into Flesh and Blood. As we go through today's video, let me know in the comments what you think, and please leave your advice to new players looking at Flesh and Blood. Every tip counts. And don't forget those likes and those subs. Engagement helps get this video in front of more eyes and helps grow our great game. This year, our heroes were evaluated using 4 main criteria. An obvious consideration is the hero being relatively easy as a starting point. Straightforward mechanics both teach and develop fundamentals of the game. How and when to block, when to take a hit so that you can come back harder, and how to sit and set up your combo or your finishing blow. But we also want and need growth opportunities. In other words, upside potential. This allows new players to evolve over time and potentially stick with their hero, trying different pathways, different deck builds, and not feel like they have to be limited to simply stab, stab, kick. This lets them change playstyle without having to jump over to a brand new hero. Flesh and Blood has multiple ways to play, and thus we consider a hero's playability in all formats. Commoner and Blitz will, likely, be the entry point for many players to start. But, as Classic Constructed is the game's primary vehicle, it is thus a primary factor. Being consistent and playable in all of the competitive formats is a must to make this list. Again, it supports and enhances player growth. And, of course, the finances part of this is relevant. Heroes are evaluated both for their cost of entry and their cost when fully upgraded. While every hero can certainly get expensive once you start upgrading, how playable are they at an entry level? Do they need big cards like E-Strike or CNC? Or can a player still get a feel for that hero at a decent entry cost, albeit a little less efficiently? Furthermore, this year saw the introduction of the Armory deck product line, out of the box and fully playable Classic Constructed pre-constructed decks. Each deck focuses on an established hero, providing room for future upgrades. These decks will focus on the different strategies, playstyles, and weapons, as each character has their own unique theme. Now, as the Armory line is relatively new, limiting our list to only heroes with Armory decks would be unfair, but it is certainly a factor that should be considered where appropriate. But with all of that said, and I cannot stress this enough, the rule of cool reigns supreme. Flesh and Blood, above all else, is a game, and we play games to have fun. If you want to play a certain hero, if it speaks to you, then do it. First and foremost, do what will bring you joy. As we jump into the list, please take a minute to look at my partner store, Gongai Games, where I run the Flesh and Blood program. For your sealed product, check them out at gongaigames.com and use code COMMANDO10 at checkout for 10% off of your purchase. This year, I open with 2 very brief honorable mentions. The Jarl Vittradi Armory deck released just recently in December of 24, and although a hefty price tag of $60, it does come with a decent start to this hero. Furthermore, Jarl heralds the upcoming Guardian Mastery set, another interesting opportunity for new players. But also, and perhaps more importantly, Jarl and his playstyle seem to suit a more experienced and entrenched Flesh and Blood player. While again, players should always pick what they are attracted to, while Jarl may be easily pick-upable, I do not believe Jarl to be easily approachable. Next, we have Aria Scarlet Revenger. Historically, Aria was the welcome hero for Flesh and Blood, the hero many players cut their teeth on. So while Aria would thus seem like an easy auto-include on this list, I've left her off for 2 reasons. First, as with Jarl, she's not legal in Blitz, although I must note that she is quite legitimate in Commoner. But second, and for me this is the deal breaker, Aria is not currently available in a standard product. Released as a thank you promo for the 5th year anniversary, stores were allocated 16. While this ensured the existing player base at the time had access, Aria is not readily available, and at the time in this video, she's selling for over $12. If Aria is re-released and more readily available in the future, I believe that my stance on this could change, but for now I cannot give a recommendation for a hero that is not readily available. Taking this year's number 5 slot is the switcheroo assassin, Uzuri. Uzuri's switcheroo attack reaction ability is relatively straightforward to understand why it would be effective, and is very attractive to new players as they can immediately start seeing the play lines. A few quick searches into the card pool, and players are often running with their own ideas. Over time, players can grow and evolve how they approach building with Uzuri. She can be played with a mid-range type build, leaning heavily into her switcheroo to deliver on hits, or she can be built with a more fatigue-style focus using the dynasty attacks to threaten damage or to mill. The assassin equipment loadout is very affordable. Mask Perdition removes the immediate need for Crown of Providence, and Redback Shroud at $16 is a legit backfill for Tunic, still threatening that extra resource when needed for attack reactions. And from a pure entry level, not only are many of the assassin equipment pieces extremely cheap, but they also have very equivalent common swaps for nearly every slot. Uzuri's key class Majestics are quite affordable as well, but one huge drawback to Uzuri is that making the jump from entry to fully tuned can be incredibly expensive. Now, you may be wondering, with all the positive feedback I have for Uzuri, why is she just number 5? Well, be warned, a fully tuned Uzuri is one of the most expensive decks out there. Cards like CNC and Codex of Frailty instantly catapult her into the thousands of dollars, and this is why she sits higher on this list than she would otherwise. Anyone doubting Uzuri's ability to disrupt the meta and perform well, when piloted well, can reference this year's Pro Tour Amsterdam, where Yamamura Shoma upset the entire field with his excellently piloted Uzuri. Uzuri promises to have upside potential going forward into the competitive meta in perpetuity, and with her ability to constantly threaten on hits, she's a great choice as she'll always be relevant and will only get better with each set release. Historically, Aria has been the classic learning point for Flesh and Blood, with good reason, and while she is now CC legal, the original combo ninja Katsu serves as the next logical transition for many players into the larger world of Flesh and Blood. But that alone is not why Katsu comes in at number 4 on our list. Katsu, of course, has his Kodachis, which are phenomenal weapons that enable the Fab 101 stab kick, or punch as it may be, line of play. This is an extremely affordable and effective line of play. With the 2-card hand, you can present 3 attacks, 2 small and 1 big. This allows for good blocking and constant inevitable type pressure on the opponent. Ninja Turtle Katsu is a long-valued line of play, in which players essentially tank up, taking advantage of efficient cards like Flick Flack and the Red D-Reacts, while whittling down on their opponent. As players grow with Katsu, they can start exploring the various combo lines, perhaps going a little more aggro. Maybe it's the classic Lord of Wind line, the 100 Winds of Eternity line, or the renewed Surging Gust's Wave Dishonor line. And with the Hunted's release, it will be very interesting to see what can be done with the new cards. There is no shortage of build options with our ninjas. Mask of Pouncing Lynx provides a budget option for a headpiece, but players will eventually want to get a Mask of Momentum, which, yes, will run them around 100 depending on the market. Furthermore, many of the key combo enablers or combo enders are quite pricey. This is perhaps the largest gate to the next step of all ninjas. Despite the fact that the rest of their stuff is dirt cheap, this concern, combined with polarizing meta viability, is why Katsu's in our number 4 slot. Katsu is very straightforward out of the gate. He's very efficient, he's very consistent, relatively cheap, has a ton of upside, and a ton of growth. And with his new spec that is due to release in the Hunted, things are looking very up for Katsu. And if players grow bored with him, both his card pool and the learnings gained from playing him provide a great jumping off point to the other ninjas as players desire. But regardless, Katsu is a phenomenal starting hero, one who many Flesh and Blood players still main to this day. This year's number 3 slot sees the first ever Brute to make one of these lists. Historically, the Brute faction's discard mechanics and no block mechanics are less straightforward for new players, and make for more difficult deck building around the 6 attack requirement. But with heavy hitters came Kayo, armed and dangerous, turning many of the traditional Brute misses into hits, and making might tokens as an added bonus. Armed Kayo is a strong performer in both Classic Constructed and Blitz, and is an absolute blast in Commoner. Over time, players can continue to evolve their Kayo deck with stronger cards, better equipment, all while maintaining the same general strategy. But that's not to say there's no flexibility. There are several different methods by which Kayo can smash his opponent. A traditional aggro method with Blood Rush Bellow, or over-the-top type strategy with Cast Bones. Furthermore, Kayo and much of the Brute class package is extremely affordable. Many of Kayo's fundamental cards are commons, and extremely cheap equipment loadouts exist as well. In fact, nearly every equipment slot has a legitimate budget option. As players decide to upgrade, fundamental Brute staples like Bloodrush Bellow are also quite affordable, and even the legendaries are on the cheaper side as compared to other classes. One point of caution, however, while Kayo does indeed have an armory deck which would normally be seen as a positive, it was the first one released, is in extremely high demand, and can be very hard to find, often at a significant premium. I highly recommend against the armory deck to start. Kayo can be built at a fundamental level for pennies on the dollar. Armed Kayo is fundamentally strong, extremely straightforward, surprisingly affordable, and being non-talented, the vast majority of his cards port directly over to the other brutes. An excellent choice for new players to start with and grow. None of the prophecies said we couldn't have a little fun, and this year our number 2 spot is taken down by our aggro lightning Runeblade, Aurora. As a Runeblade, Aurora is a hybrid fighter, wielding both magic and melee in equal measure. And as an elemental hero with Essence of Lightning, she has access to near limitless Go Again and pumps in instants. As Aurora, searing electricity courses through your veins, and as a hybrid hero, you have several avenues with which to unleash it, each equally destructive. The path to learning and growing with Aurora couldn't be more clear. As one of the first strike heroes, today's new player can pick her up as their literal first experience with the game, and then turn right around and start to look for the next phase. Immediately, her upgrade paths become clear. Cards like Burn Up Shock define a clear path to punching through massive damage onto your opponent. Your specialization, Arc Lightning, rewards you for going wide, and teaches players how setting up wide combos can reward them with massive damage dumps onto their opponent. As players grow and develop, they can explore. Does one go with a combo pop-off using Crown of Dominion and Gold for a massive Arc Lightning combo turn? Or take a more paced, straightforward approach with a larger armor suite? Aurora can be equally effective in Classic Constructive and Blitz with only minor tweaks. At the entry level, Aurora is extremely affordable. While she certainly benefits from the more expensive cards like Grasp of the Arc Knight and Dyadic Carapace, she can reasonably perform with either Ironweave and Vexing Quillhand. Her spec, Arc Lightning, is relatively affordable, but some of her lightning-focused cards are in the mid to upper teens, and some of these are pretty essential. Whereas you can live without a Gone in a Flash, cards like Channel Valley and Current Funnel are pretty important. Aurora may not be as expensive to fully tune as other heroes, but let's not kid ourselves, she's not cheap by any means. Now, one point of caution to Aurora from a new player standpoint is her tendency to not want to block and instead just race. This may appeal to a lot of new players as an aggro mindset, but this is potentially, depending on the player, a risk to them in terms of developing their fab fundamentals. Blocking is an essential skill in Flesh and Blood, and starting off with a hero that largely ignores this can be, potentially, a speed bump on the growth path of a new player. With that said, Aurora is an incredibly fun hero and provides near limitless options for flexibility and deck tuning. I'm obviously biased as she is currently the hero I'm having the most fun with, but is also one I recommend for players looking to come into the game today. Our top hero is no stranger to this list, but this year, she appears on here in the number 1 slot as a different version. Honestly, I can't say enough good things about Dash.io as an entry-friendly hero who has tons of upside room for complexity and mastery. At entry level, Dash.io is very straightforward. Boost to attack and maintain pressure, and work to line up your boom grenades with a dominated payload, hitting for significant damage. Or work to set up that triple boost turn that finishes with a massive hit from maximum velocity. As players grow, diving into the deep library of Mechanologist items and mastering the sequencing and combo pop-off setup will provide limitless challenges and carries tons of upside potential. Now, as compared to her original counterpart, Dash.io is admittedly a bit more siloed in her playstyle. In the Blitz and Commoner formats, Database Dash typically has to focus in on the boosty boost type builds, but these builds are also very strong and very straightforward. And more importantly, she's extremely fun. Dash is also very, very cheap. Few of her cards are greater than a few dollars, and her legendary chess piece, the Teklo Heart, is easily swapped out for Vest of the First Fist or for other options. Furthermore, Dash has an armory deck available, which is still widely available at MSRP. It's a phenomenal starting deck, arguably one of the best standard armory decks printed to date. The upside on growth for a new player on Dash.io is very high. Dash.io is a hero that you could pick up on day one, develop the basics of boosting, and be perfectly happy with playing as you continue to develop. She's that fun, that good, and that deep. With an easy entry point and good upside, Dash.io is a fantastic choice for a new player. Now, you may have noticed that our number 2 hero, Aurora, and our number 1 hero, Dash.io, had equal net ratings, yet Dash was the one that took the number 1 slot. And the reason for that lies in the discussion around Flesh and Blood's Living Legend system and long-term hero viability. The Living Legend system is Flesh and Blood's primary method of rotation. Heroes earn points based on high-level event wins, and when they cross 1,000 points in each format, they become unplayable in that format. As such, this is an important thing of which to maintain awareness when selecting a hero. Heroes that are close to their numbers, or gaining points at a faster rate, are obviously less desirable, because it gives you less time to play them, and less mileage out of any purchases. However, the LL system is a cumulative system. In other words, all heroes will eventually ascend, whether it takes 1 year or 10. And as such, it's always good to look at crossover options when evaluating your heroes. And that is why Aurora took the number 2 spot behind Dash.io. In her short tenure since her drop in Rosetta, Aurora has already earned 345 Living Legend points. While we can expect her to still be legal for a good while yet, their current concern is around her alignment to a talent, Elemental, and Lightning. The vast majority of Aurora's deck is comprised of cards that see little play by the other Runeblades, and the other Lightning hero is a wizard who plays significantly differently and is of a completely different archetype. When Aurora does eventually LL, it would certainly require a larger jump for players to find another hero. This is compared to Dash.io, who is a Mechanologist. While she of course has her own playstyle, Dash's cards maintain playability with the other Mechanologists, with obviously minor tweaks in playstyle. For only minor tweaks in learning, minor singles purchases, players could port over to another mech hero with minimal churn. We see a similar situation with Kayo, who finds himself sitting over 70% of the way to Living Legend. Nearly all of his cards will directly port over to the other brutes, making a transition extremely easy and affordable. And this is also why the Mistveil heroes, despite being meta-dominant since their release in May of 24, are intentionally absent from this list. Each of them has rocketed through the LL boards. Furthermore, because the set is built upon an I beat you beat me, they beat you type balance, once the first one LLs, the others will be advantaged to climb faster. Being Mystic talent, those cards are thus useless in the meta until another Mystic hero is released, which could of course be a good while. So yes, while it's always attractive to pick up the strongest heroes in the meta, because of Living Legend concerns, the Mistveil heroes are not a good entry point. Now, while I want to be clear that there's no perfect formula or approach to considering hero longevity, it is certainly something to maintain in your consideration, especially when taking the financial dive to trick out a hero. But of course, my friends, remember that golden rule. If they look cool, and if it's going to make you happy, then to me, it sounds like the right choice. So that does it for our list today. Hopefully this helped you in whatever stage of the game you're in, and I hope that this stimulated some thought and discussion. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate the dialogue and comments, and I try and answer everything that I can. I love interacting and having very constructive conversations with you all, so let me know in the comments what you're thinking. I appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for tuning in. And, as always, community first, and go Commando.